Hello and welcome to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and we have reached the end of Sunday Week 4. Nearly 4 weeks are in the book at this moment, which means we have 240 minutes of NFL footage on the majority of teams around the leagues. Obviously, we've had some COVID cancellations, 2 Monday night games to go through, and the Steelers and Titans postponements. So, not applicable to everyone, I get it, but we do have a bunch of film on everybody. I am here tonight, your host, Ian Hartitz, as always, after these Sunday games to break down everything I just went down. Fantasy notes, snap counts, main takeaways, who got injured, who we got to be looking out for, and all that kind of stuff. So, this is the first episode of the week. It's coming out on this Monday morning. Make sure you tune in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tuesday podcast, I wrap up the Monday night games and go over, some key injury notes because we still don't know too much right now. Wednesday, I go over a game-by-game preview for next week. And Thursday, I bring on a guest and we go through some start-sit questions. And then finally on Friday, it's wrapping up Thursday night and then looking at some injuries ahead of the weekend. So without further ado, let's get after these games. So first up, most entertaining game of the slate, probably Browns beat the Cowboys 49-38. And, absolutely wild game from the perspective that the Browns put up 49 freaking points with Baker Mayfield only having 165 passing yards. And hey, they didn't need him to pass the ball because no matter who was running the ball for the Cleveland Browns, they were having all sorts of success. So Nick Chubb suffered an ankle or knee injury early on. He only had 6 carries before he went out of the game, only played 13 total snaps. So after that, it was the Kareem Hunt show to an extent. Now, don't forget, Kareem Hunt was banged up this whole week with a groin injury. So when you see these box scores tomorrow and you look and you see D'Ernest Johnson, AAF Hall of Famer D'Ernest Johnson had 13 carries for 95 yards. Don't get too excited because, again, Kareem Hunt had this groin injury. And I think, once he gets healthier in future weeks, it's going to be much more of a one-man show. So, in addition to D'Ernest Johnson, Dontrell Hilliard was out there playing. Kareem Hunt still led the way in snaps and, had 11 carries, was able to find the end zone twice on his own. It wasn't like that he was a liability out there by any stretch. And the Browns were surprisingly playing with such a big lead throughout this game. There really wasn't much of a need to overstress Hunt. So just wouldn't go out there, breaking down the fab for Johnson or Hilliard or anything. This should be Kareem Hunt's backfield as long as Chubb is missing time. And then, for these Browns receivers, amazing game by OBJ, caught 5 of 8 targets for 81 yards, a pair of scores, one of which came from Jarvis Landry. Unfortunately, my helicopter pick went crashing down with Jarvis. He did throw for a touchdown, 37-yard dart. Always, forget he's a lefty out there, but good arm. And thought, targeting the undervalued number 2 receiver in this, potential really high scoring game would go, potential good direction with him being lower owned. But kudos to the Browns for just being able to run all over this Cowboys defense. And that really is, I think, the biggest takeaway from this game is just the Cowboys operate at such a fast pace. Their offense, their passing offense can come back from any deficit to an extent. And their defense just cannot stop anyone, seemingly in the pass or the ground. We're going to continue to see fantasy-friendly shootouts again and again and again. Dak is on pace for 6,760 passing yards, everyone. Absolutely ridiculous. And look, he had about 3 picks drop before the end. This was a game where he didn't play quite as great as the scoreboard looks. But, at the end of the day, I don't know how many quarterbacks are going to be able to win when your defense is giving up 49 points. Shout out Ezekiel Elliott getting the Cowboys' first run of over 15 yards this year. They were the last remaining team that failed to do that. And also shout out to Amari Cooper for going 12 catches, 134 yards, and a score. CeeDee Lamb also had 2 touchdowns. Dalton Schultz found one. Michael Gallup a little bit quiet, but that's just going to be life in this crowded Cowboys offense sometimes. Now, I have a stat. Now, I did this last week and didn't have a good name for the stat. Some of you gave me crap on Twitter. I appreciate that, and I let you down. But I have a name for my favorite matchup stat of the week. Now, this is not, anything that's necessarily super fantasy focused moving forward. Not something you need to, really hang your hat on as predictive, but just something really cool that I like. And I'm naming it the PFF Lily matchup stat. And if you didn't know, I have a wiener dog named Lily. She's great. I enjoy the PFF name shtick. Do they make you lose the PFF part of your name if you get fired? I don't know. Hopefully we don't have to find out. Anyway, PFF Lily matchup stat of the week. OBJ is only on pace despite this amazing start. And again, he mentioned his receiving line. He also had a back-breaking 50-yard touchdown on a rush to win the game. But he's only on pace receiving-wise for 64 catches, 944 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Amari Cooper is on pace for 148 receptions, 1,603 yards, and a Julio Jones-esque 4 touchdowns. Look, OBJ looked fantastic out there. When he's just healthy, he's capable of turning, any amount of, a small workload into a big one. But the 2.02 yards per route run, that's the second lowest mark of his career, only behind what he had in Cleveland last year. All I'm saying is this is still a run-first offense, as we saw in this game, and apparently the Browns will be able to run first on a lot more teams than we kind of thought. So, if you're able to get someone to break the bank, that's now treating OBJ as, this locked-in top 3, top 5 wide receiver, I wouldn't hate selling high. I mean, look, career high 16-yard ADOT right now, career worst 47.1 catch rate for OBJ. He's really in that field stretcher role. This is the boom. And we know OBJ, when he has, any sort of role, he can provide these sort of week-winning outcomes. So, again, don't sell him for scraps by any stretch of the imagination. But just realize someone like Cooper, someone like even freaking Keenan Allen out there, if you're able to package a deal where you're able to get, someone that's just going to, more times than not, be seeing potentially double the amount of targets OBJ is going to get in a game, wouldn't hate doing that deal if, again, someone's going to buy Beckham at the top of his value. Moving on, we had the Bengals defeat the Jaguars 33-25. Mr. Joe Burrow getting his first professional win, and he played really great out there. I mean, 300 yards passing, 25 for 36. Could have been a lot bigger game. I mean, he threw an interception to his tight end Drew Sample, but I mean, this ball probably should have been caught. Miles Jack ended up just kind of yanking it out of his grasp. And, PFF only charged T. Higgins with 1 drop, but just watching the game, there were a couple more of his incompletions that I thought he at least had a chance to come down with. So maybe not an outrageous drop, but anyway, Burrow wasn't getting the help, only sacked once, and that was good to see. And that's why, we were so high on him this week against the Jaguars defense that had the fewest pressures in the league going in. But ultimately, it was the Joe Mixon story. 151 rushing yards, 2 scores, 6 receptions for 30 yards and another score. Those 6 receptions are his second highest mark of his career, most since 2018. Giovanni Bernard only played 13 snaps, second fewest in a game over the last 2 years for Giovanni Bernard. So this was a situation where the Bengals, had a big lead. Jaguars scored 12 points in the fourth quarter to kind of make it seem closer, but they were really in control most of this game. Gio's going to still be involved moving forward, but hopefully this was a sign that, they are going to use Mixon more in the pass game. He's certainly good enough to deserve that sort of usage, and honestly, just a good, good enough player, and they're paying him. Got to get this guy the ball more and more often. So hopefully, I've advised you guys in this podcast, please stand tight with Mixon going in this week. He was on pace for 315 touches. The touchdowns are going to come. They did come this week. I'll continue to treat him as, this top 12, top 10 RB. It's unfortunate we can't lock him in as a top 3, top 5 guy because I think Gio's going to have bigger weeks. But again, when things go right with Mixon, with Derrick Henry, with these other, quote unquote game script dependent backs, this is the type of performance that we can see. On the Jaguars side of the ball, credit to DJ Chark coming back, catching 8 of 9 targets for 95 yards, pair of scores. Also saw Laviska Shenault, 86 yards on just 6 targets. He had some tackle breaking goodness out there. But, big story here, other than Gardner Minshew bouncing back a little bit with 351 yards. It's just James RB1 season again, everyone. I mean, 17 carries, 75 yards. Chris Thompson shaved off 25% of the snaps, but he didn't even have a touch. So it truly is the James Robinson backfield. Only thing I would just say is, again, continue to think with James Robinson. And this is what I was talking about with OBJ. Like right now, he's performing at like the highest range of his outcomes. And James Robinson going this game was the PPR RB5 on the season. I mean, it's absurd. And only this week, only Dalvin Cook broke more tackles on the ground. James Robinson is a good player, playing well. Just realize this Jaguars team sure looks like a team that's going to finish at 4-12, 5-11. I don't really think Robinson is going to finish this year as a top 5 RB. Going out on a limb there, top 12, top 15, maybe. But again, this is the peak of James Robinson's powers. You got him off the waiver wire, or you got him, at a very late round spot. So don't give him up for anything. But like OBJ, if someone is willing to treat James Robinson as a top 5 RB he's been to this point, wouldn't hate selling on him just for someone that isn't going to be yanked off the field in these more, adverse situations. So not a bad guy to have in your roster. I'm not saying sell James Robinson, but if you can find someone out there that, is going to buy him at the top, might not be a bad idea. But quickly on Joe Mixon with the PFF Lilly stat of the matchup, the only guys with more yards after contact this season than Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs. That's it. It's been a hard sledding for Mixon this whole year, but, he's getting the volume, continues to get good production. He's working hard to get so. So kudos to Joe Mixon. Finally got the big game. All right, next up, we got the Vikings 31, Texans 23. This game came down to the wire. It was not a pretty performance from Texans at first. Funny storyline going in was Bill O'Brien saying he's taking over the play calling duties again, so it kind of left him out to dry there with that Ravens, Chiefs, Steelers front stretch, and comes back in against the banged up Vikings defense, but was not a good start at all. Only 6 points at halftime. They're only averaging 4 yards per play after 30 minutes, and it really took Deshaun Watson to start, getting out of the pocket, making things happen, and just making big plays in big moments for them to even get back in this game. One of his touchdowns went to Kenny Stills on a 4th and 10. The other one to Will Fuller on a little bit of a broken play. But, credit to Will Fuller for, coming back and having this big game. Caught 6 or 7 targets, 108 yards and a touchdown. Shout out Jetpack Gallio on Twitter. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. But this guy, he's into astronomy. He's figured out apparently whenever the moon is at least near a full moon, or, like a waning gibbous, whatever the big one is. Excuse my lack of astrology knowledge here. But hilariously, Will Fuller weeks are 4-0 this year. If it's a full moon or a lot of moon, he goes off. If it's not, he doesn't. So that's, the kind of game-changing analysis you're looking for here from PFF. But just a funny storyline to stay with this year. Fuller had that goose egg in week 2 against the Ravens. But other than that, he's had over 100 yards or scored or both every week this year. Guy's doing great. He's going to truly be on that borderline wide receiver 1 range anytime he's healthy enough to go. Is his, range of outcomes a little bit wider than your typical borderline wide receiver 1? Yes, but it goes in both directions, and we haven't seen that just complete blow up yet. I still think better days are here to come from this Texans offense. One concern with the backfield a little bit. I'm not backing down from saying David Johnson is a good buy low candidate by any stretch, but it wasn't the best usage with the first week back from Mr. Duke Johnson, who, I'm a huge fan of. Truly think Duke is a 3-down back. I'm not going to let Hugh Jackson and Bill O'Brien's usage of him change my mind about that. But today, David Johnson, 55% snaps, 16 carries, 3 targets, and Duke was pretty involved with 39% snaps, 5 carries, and 4 targets. So again, David, 19 opportunities. He's the clear lead back, but he is like the Carlos Hyde last year with a little more receiving work. And that's not bad. That's still, an weekly RB2 type stick. But, the 90% snaps we were seeing for the last few weeks, don't appear to be there as long as Duke is healthy. So David, still a good buy low candidate, I think. Again, this upcoming schedule was fine. He got stopped just short of the goal line towards the end of the game. Could have been much bigger. And that's the thing with Fuller. I didn't even mention this. His best catch was not a catch. They ruled it barely, hit the ground because Watson took him down there. And on 4th and goal, Fuller went up. Seemed like he got it. I almost still think he caught it, but they ruled it an incompletion and that ended the game. So again, it wasn't the exact, bounce back performance from this Texans offense, but as we saw, Watson on a bad day goes for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Keep going back to the well with this offense, particularly the passing game. On the Vikings side of the ball, so Kirk Cousins, went out there, only had to throw 22 times, but converted it into 260 passing yards. And we're seeing this more and more with them. The offense goes through Dalvin Cook. Why wouldn't it? 27 carries, 130 yards, and 2 scores, and looking, the whole way like one of the best running backs in football, as he has for most of his career. His long run was only 15, so this dude was just consistently racking up missed tackles and doing his thing. Nobody broke more tackles on the ground than Dalvin this Sunday, continuing to ball out. Anyone's idea of a top 5 RB moving forward. But the big guy that's coming on now strong is Justin Jefferson. And, in this game, Adam Thielen had 10 targets, caught 8 of them for 114 yards in the score. That's great. We know Thielen's the wide receiver 1, but Jefferson, another 100 yards, 103, caught 4 or 5 targets now. And he is just balling out over these last 2 weeks. And look, it's a condensed target share in Minnesota, just like in Seattle. I know this year they're more pass happy, but last year, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf made the most of their limited opportunities because of how fantasy friendly were, because they were downfield, because they were in a high scoring offense. And the Vikings is a little bit more of a poor man's version of that. I understand, a Kirk Cousins deep ball isn't worth quite the same as a Russell Wilson deep ball, but just realize that not every target is created equal. And this takes us into our PFF Lilly matchup stat. Kirk Cousins, through 4 weeks, is tied for first in the league with 25 deep ball attempts. The ball's thrown at least 20 yards downfield. Not deep ball rate, deep ball attempts. So even though this guy in games where the Vikings are scoring 30 points or they're down multiple scores and they still won't put their foot on the gas in the passing game, Kirk is still throwing downfield enough to have that mark, Just so you know, like he's tied with Dak Prescott right now at 25 and Aaron Rodgers is at 24, so he's probably going to pass him Monday night. But Kirk Cousins certainly throwing downfield far more often than we would have expected. Next up, Ravens defeated the Washington football team 31-17. Nice little bounce back performance from Lamar Jackson and company. And not that we expected him not to. And we talked about this on the pod, but Could have been a much better performance against the Chiefs had he hit Hollywood Brown on one of those 2 deep balls, or Mark Andrews ran in that touchdown. But vintage 50-yard touchdown run by Lamar, cutting through. I think it's an inverted veer. I don't want to, overstep my football knowledge here, but, that same play, he just had like the memorable touchdown against the Bengals last year, I believe, and then against, Florida State back in college. So just fantastic. I love the way he spins into the end zone after, shaking off a couple defenders. Also had 2 scores through the air, looked good. Could have had a 3rd deep one, the Hollywood Brown. I mean, it sucks. I'll probably put together a video here soon of the, various deep ball misses that Hollywood's had this year, because he gets open a lot, and, Lamar unfortunately hasn't been able to hit him as often as we would have liked to see. Mark Andrews caught all 3 of his targets for 57 yards and a pair of scores. Hollywood still had a good enough day despite the misses, 4 catches for 86 yards, no one else over 30. This is the good thing about this stack. And eventually Hollywood Brown's going to come through. But, Lamar Jackson, you look at these when you're trying to play him in DFS, he is so much more expensive than the other quarterbacks, or usually. But the good thing is we see Andrews at tight end. Usually their price ceiling is lower than wide receiver. And then Hollywood isn't all that expensive right now. So yes, Lamar is more expensive than the quarterbacks, but you can get fantasy friendly stacks in this passing game with Lamar, Hollywood, and Andrews. And I think when you take the whole of that cost, it's a little bit less than some other guys. So something to pay attention to moving forward. This backfield remains a mess, everyone, and it sucks. Mark Ingram played 25% snaps, Gus Edwards 39%, and Dobbins 34%. No one had even 10 touches on this game. Credit to Mark for getting the short goal line touchdown, and, credit to Dobbins for making some plays, but Edwards is still doing his thing too. I mean, it's a good real life problem to have. It's annoying as hell for fantasy owners. Even if one guy gets hurt, it's still going to be a split backfield to some extent. At least in that situation, we could, expect 12 plus touches per game. But with Lamar siphoning off so much rushing work of his own, just a tough situation to have. I mean, I'm still holding out plenty of hope for Dobbins in 2021 at a minimum, in dynasty season, once Ingram is probably out of the picture. But, even then, a lot of uncertainty in this crowded but incredibly effective backfield. Look at the Washington football team. So, Terry McLaurin did his thing, caught 10 of 14 targets for 118 yards. So much of it is yak this year that, we're going to see him continue to be able to overcome these tough matchups, even with volume. And, how about volume? Dwayne Haskins completed 32 of 45 pass attempts for 314 yards, no scores, no picks. Just most hilariously, sucky thing to come out of this, though. 45 pass attempts, and Logan Thomas only 4 targets, 1 catch for 8 yards. He keeps ranking at the top of these tight end targets, but man, at some point, and that point is probably right now, we need to see a little bit more from Logan Thomas than just, uncatchable or just, unfancy friendly targets, because his touchdown in week 1 came on, a big time busted coverage. Wasn't exactly a great play by any stretch. And, ever since then, it's been rough sledding. So, it was looking like maybe McLaurin and Logan Thomas could be relevant in this offense. Right now, I'm thinking it's just McLaurin and Antonio Gibson. We jumped the gun a little bit on Antonio Gibson breakout season in week 3. He had the 60% plus snap rate in week 2. Seemed like things were going up. But J.D. McKissic remained involved, and we saw that still in this game. And McKissic actually led the way in snaps with 54%, siphoned off 2 carries and 8 targets. But Gibson 44%, 13 carries, 5 targets. Got the goal line touches. Barber, they gave him 1. He couldn't get in. They gave it to Gibson. He got in. So that's really good moving forward. And just sooner rather than later, we're going to see McKissic get out of here. We finally saw Gibson show what he could do as a receiver. He caught 4 or 5 targets for 82 yards, including a long of 40 on a screen where he was just showing both burst and tackle breaking ability. I mean, McKissic, caught 7 of 8 targets for 40 yards. So twice as many opportunities almost and half the production. So just think it's a situation where right now Gibson has way more early down work than we expected, and McKissic is being outplayed by him. So truly have a CMC-esque role as a possibility in this offense. Head coach used to be CMC's guy, has compared Gibson to CMC. It's a matter of when, not if, Gibson takes over this backfield. If you can still get him on the buy low, do so. And I think we're at the point where, especially with bye weeks coming up, Gibson should be in your starting lineup more weeks than not moving forward. Our PFF Lily stat of the matchup is that Hollywood Brown, league high, 12 targets, thrown at least 20 yards downfield, and he's caught 4 of the 5 catchable ones. So 1 drop on him this year, but 7 of those 12 targets just have not been deemed catchable by PFF. Again, Lamar hardly a liability as a passer. I mean, anyone wants to make the RB jokes and not be joking, please stop, because you're not making yourself sound smart. But, so far they have not quite had that, pristine downfield connection. I do think we'll see better days ahead for it. Moving on, Saints defeated the Lions 35-29. Drew Brees getting loosey-goosey out there. Actually had 4 passes thrown at least 20 yards downfield in week 4 alone. In weeks 1 through 3, he only had 3 such pass attempts. So, kind of explains why when you look at the receiving workload and you see Alvin Kamara only had 3 catches for 36 yards. Emmanuel Sanders, Traquan Smith. Sanders went for 93 yards. Smith had 54 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Brees got his wide receivers involved. You love to see it. Michael Thomas seems to be coming back soon, so I don't think we're going to get too much consistency from Sanders and Smith. Obviously, Kamara is going to have more than 4 targets most weeks, but it was just good to see that the Saints offense is still capable of doing this. I know it's against the Lions. I'm not crowning the Saints, as the elite of the elite offenses yet, but we've seen this for a few years now where when the Saints have played the Vikings in the playoffs, they've really, prevented them, their ability to throw deep. It was just more concerning when this type of stuff was happening against the Raiders of all teams, in week 2. So it does seem like, kind of iffy start to the season, but we probably should be expecting the Saints to be operating as a top 10 offense once again. And then so looking at, I mentioned this in my RB article this week. You can check it out every Wednesday. I take stock. It's called Taking Stock of all 32 NFL backfields. I go through the previous week's usage, kind of knife through if someone's injured and what we should look at with backup running backs and all that type of stuff. But anyway, mentioned that Latavius Murray, had potential in this spot for standalone value, and it's starting to look like maybe even more than just this spot, maybe just in general. Like last year, he only had 10 plus touches in 4 games with a healthy Kamara. This year, he's already gotten in 3 or 4 games with a healthy Kamara. So, I think some of it's Michael Thomas being out, some of it's them having positive game script, except for that week 2 matchup where the Raiders got up on him. But, Latavius, he's doing a good job. They're giving him, pretty much all the rushing workload he can handle. 14 carries, 64 yards, and 2 scores against the Lions. He's doing a good job with it. So, Latavius, especially in these cozy matchups where we have the Saints versus a bad run defense, favored and, projected positive game script, that's where we can get behind him as a legit flex option. So love to see that. Kamara is still your, overall RB1. I'm not saying Latavius is eating into that, but, it's not that long ago. We only have to go back a few years where we saw Kamara and Mark Ingram returning fantasy RB1 value. Not saying Latavius is going to do that, but, wouldn't be shocking to see him, show up in that kind of high-end RB3 range, even if Kamara doesn't get hurt this year. On the Lions side of the ball, Stafford was throwing downfield more often. And we've talked about this on the podcast throughout the year, where first 2 weeks with Kenny Galladay out didn't have the same, fantasy-friendly high average target depth we saw in 2019. That did change this week. He got it up to 11.8, and he's been kind of down in the 9 range before, so that was good. But, still 11 carries for Adrian Peterson in a game where they were behind, pretty much from the second quarter on after getting a brief lead. It was good to see DeAndre Swift back involved. This backfield is still a mess. So, Stafford, it's good he's throwing downfield more. I think Kenny Galladay, who had a touchdown, 62 yards and 8 targets, he's fine. But after that, right now, you could be taking a little bit of a leap of faith with anyone because it's just pretty crowded and everything's a mess, particularly this backfield. Adrian Peterson, 43% snaps, DeAndre Swift, 38%, and then Jamal Agnew and Kerryon Johnson each had 20% as well. And, Swift, it was good to see him get the 4 targets. He caught one for a touchdown. He's, gotten open as a receiver. He's had his drop problems this year, notably in week 1 with that potential game winner slipping through his hands. But, it does seem like he'll have better days ahead. His usage, where he only played a couple snaps in week 3, was super puzzling. Luckily, they seem to be over that. If he is someone on your waiver wire, might not be a bad idea, because at some point, I think this Adrian Peterson experiment has to end. As quickly as he has risen up the top of this depth chart, I don't think it'd be too shocking if he just kind of gets overtaken by Swift at some point. But, I know the bench spots are scarce these days. So if you just want to not touch the situation at all, can't blame you there. PFF Lilly stat in the matchup. Brees his deep ball rate through 4 weeks, his, percentage of passes thrown 20 yards downfield, per deep ball, just per overall attempt is 5.2% this year. And this is really low. I mean, he was at 8.2% in 2019, 11.2% in 2018, 11.4% in 2017, 9.8% in 2016. Just realize that he has never been this guy that's consistently been throwing downfield. I mean, all those marks I just said, yes, they're higher than 5.2%, but these were still, far down the list in the terms of the bottom half of the league. So Brees, Saints have never usually had to throw it deep. It's been a little bit more of an issue this year because teams haven't even respected the threat as much. But, again, if Brees can keep doing what he did this game, where he just throws deep a little bit more often, keeps them on their toes and does so accurately, I think we're going to see the Saints offense get back to looking like the juggernaut they've been for the better part of the last decade and a half. Up next, we got the Panthers defeating the Cardinals 31-21. Mike Davis just keeps breaking tackles, everyone. How much longer until Mike Davis holds out for a new contract and pulls a Christian McCaffrey, But I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon. But never know. 2020, stranger things. Mike Davis, 72% snaps, 16 rush attempts, 6 more targets. Reggie Bonifant, 26% snaps, 10 carries, 2 targets. A lot of that was in garbage time. Wasn't expecting garbage time on the Carolina side of the ball, but that was kind of what we ended up seeing in this game. They got up. Credit to Teddy Bridgewater, 276 yards, pair of touchdowns on 37 attempts, efficient throughout the game, and also looking elusive out there. I mean, he had a touchdown run where he was just, it's going to be fun to watch in all 22, going back and forth, making several defenders miss. Haven't seen that out of Teddy in a while. So good on Teddy. And yeah, Mike Davis just breaking all sorts of tackles. So I don't want to give away the PFF Lilly stat, but got something coming up there. With the wide receivers, Robbie Anderson, another big game, caught 8 of 11 targets for 99 yards. I know a lot of people were hoping this was going to be the week for the DJ Moore bounce back. He caught 4 of 6 targets for 49 yards. There's going to be bigger games ahead. I mean, look, through 4 weeks, Robbie Anderson has 34 targets. DJ Moore has 32. So yes, this is clearly more of a 1A, 1B situation in some order than we thought coming in, but this is still clearly the top 2. I mean, the big problem with DJ Moore previously was the presence of McCaffrey, and that he was kind of the wide receiver the number 2 pass game option in his own offense at times because McCaffrey was getting so fed. Well, McCaffrey's out of the picture. I mean, it's Robbie, DJ Moore, you got Mike Davis down there at 23 targets, and even if you want to add McCaffrey to that, he's still underneath DJ, and then Curtis Samuel's at 17. So yes, DJ is, not the outright number 1 receiver we were hoping for, but he's still pretty much in the same spot that he was going to be if, we had the same McCaffrey usage from last year. So this is an offense that I think the passing game is looking better than we should have thought it would have entering this season, with the least amount of continuity in the entire league. Better days ahead for the passing game, and their top 2 targets, which are Robbie and DJ Moore, are going to benefit because of that. So yeah, I'm going back to the well, buy low, DJ Moore. Quickly on the other side of the ball, Kyler Murray, not great, 133 yards through the air on 31 attempts. No interceptions. He only took 1 sack, but I mean, that's just pretty brutal. Yeah, come on, guys. He can run the ball, 6 carries, 78 yards, but just real lack of ability to push this ball downfield. Dan Arnold, their tight end, had a 25-yard catch. Other than that, nobody had a gain over 13 yards. DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, they were going up and be game time decisions. Hopkins still showed off some nice moves on the yak. I mean, he didn't look like he was playing too badly hurt, caught 7 to 9 targets for 41 yards, but just a situation that I think we saw from this offense a lot in 2019, where when they can't push the ball downfield a lot, you see things get a little bit cramped, whole lot of screens, whole lot of, horizontal movement, not as much downfield. So I think the running joke last season was that, it's not the air raid, it's the horizontal raid. And that's a little bit what it looked like today. And, when the running game isn't operating like we would like it to, and it wasn't today. I mean, Kenyan Drake, 13 carries, 35 yards, Chase Edmonds, 4 carries, 16 yards. When the run game isn't, operating as a top 3 unit like we saw for last year, I just makes things that much harder in the passing game. So, Kyler, he's doing just fine fantasy with this rushing floor. It's ridiculous, but look, his average target depth is not awful, 23rd among 37 qualified QBs. Just a situation where if Hopkins is going to be banged up and no one else is going to be able to emerge as that truly reliable number 2 guy. I mean, we were talking about Larry Fitzgerald all week being the one that, Kingsbury wants to get more targets for. Fitzgerald caught 2 or 3 targets for 4 yards. Everything is so close to the line of scrimmage right now. I'm just hesitant and trusting really anyone outside of Hopkins in this passing game. Again, Kyler as a fantasy quarterback, he's fine despite his performance. The 3 passing touchdowns on the rushing floor, not a problem at all. It's just elsewhere that's the problem. And Kenyan Drake, it's not good, guys. Thinking that this would be the spot he'd break out in made a lot of sense because everyone runs all over the Panthers. But unfortunately, 65% snaps, 13 rushes, 0 targets, all for a whopping 35 scoreless yards. We'll need to monitor this going to Monday too, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know if he got concussed, but he got banged up pretty hard and we didn't see him the rest of the game late in the 4th quarter. So really keep an eye on that. Either way, we could be looking at the point where Chase Edmonds starts to get a little more opportunity. It's been about a 70-30 split all season. That's what it was this game too, again, until Drake got hurt. But credit to Edmonds, 6 targets, 5 catches, 24 yards in his score. They have been seemingly more willing to throw him the ball this year, and he's looked good with it. So, I haven't noticed a huge difference between the guys as rushers this year, but Drake is not performing, at his highest capabilities. I do wonder sometimes, do we have to start, wondering if there's a curse of these players that kind of call out their own fantasy production? Because I know Austin Ekeler was all about it this offseason. Unfortunately, he had to get hurt. And I know Kenyan Drake had the funny Twitter post telling everyone to draft him as well. So just another, one of those like Will Fuller Moon trends to keep an eye on there. So on to our PFF Lily stat of the matchup. I just want to go over the most broken tackles over the last 3 weeks, because it's Joe Mixon in first with 18, Austin Ekeler and Dalvin Cook, Devin Singletary tied for second with 17. And then closing it out, we got Alvin Kamara at 16 and Mike Davis at 16. I mean, truly, it's not empty volume. This guy is breaking so many tackles, play after play. He looks really good out there. And, again, Reggie Bonifant, most of his production was in pure mop-up time. Mike Davis is playing great, and he is now truly in that RB1 conversation for as long as McCaffrey remains sidelined. Next game up here, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeating the Los Angeles Chargers 38-31. Pretty exciting game. It looked pretty bad for the Buccaneers at first. Brady threw a pick six. Early on, Mike Evans got kind of bent back. It looked like it was potentially a nasty injury. Luckily, he returned and was just fine. But, without Godwin for a second, I was kind of getting almost 2019 Patriots vibes from this offense with Brady, not really having any open receivers. But Evans got back out there. Brady started making some terrific throws, and things were just fine. All in all, Brady, 369 yards, 5 touchdowns, count them 5 through the air. Mike Evans caught one of them, 7 of 8 targets for Evans, 122 yards. Scotty Miller also had a touchdown. O.J. Howard, unfortunately, he's going to miss the rest of the season with an Achilles, but touchdown down to see him on a perfect ball from Brady to enable him before that. And then also had Keyshawn Vaughn, Cam Brate round out the touchdown scoring club. So great stuff from this passing game, particularly Mike Evans, playing through that pain. He was hobbling around out there throughout the afternoon, but got the job done. I mean, as long as Chris Godwin remains out, we truly do need to be treating Mike Evans as a top 5 option at the position. And Ronald Jones really took over this backfield with Leonard Fournette sidelined. Wasn't all good. I mean, he had 9 targets. Going in this game, Brady was number 1 quarterback in the league in targets to running backs. And I don't think that's going anywhere after this. Rojo only caught 6 of those 9 targets for 17 yards, had some drops thrown in between there. So not the usage we want to see there, but he looked really good as a rusher, converting 20 carries, 211 yards. And, again, looking good doing so, breaking a lot of tackles. Didn't get the, complete workhorse role we were probably hoping for, but, 64% snaps. Keyshawn Vaughn shaving away 25% with Sean McCoy, 7%. But it was a good situation. I mean, anytime you're getting 20 carries and 9 targets, we're not going to complain about that. So Rojo, if Fournette remains out, if we can legit project this dude for 20 plus touches, he is going to be an upside RB2 at worst, almost regardless of this matchup. Brady has this offense humming. Expect good fantasy goodness from pretty much everyone involved. I would note that, Keyshawn Vaughn seemingly taking over that LaShawn McCoy role is something to look out for. Tampa Bay, it was a game where they were in comeback mode for a lot of it, with Justin Herbert really leading them to a lot of points early. So if we do see LaShawn McCoy out of the picture, wouldn't be shocked if Keyshawn Vaughn has a little bit bigger role than Shady had. And this could get us back into that messy 2019 situation once Fournette is back. So, hopefully we get some word on Fournette and what his situation is. We can deal with the 2 RB backfield. If it's just Rojo and Keyshawn, that's not great, but it's okay. It's when Fournette gets back and we get back to 3 backs that things could be problematic. But on the Chargers side of the ball, I mean, Justin Herbert came to play, 20 for 25, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 bad pick at the end. But my goodness, I mean, 2 of these touchdowns in particular, just complete bombs. 172 yards to Jalen Guyton, then 53 yards to Tyron Johnson, I believe it was. Just put on the money down the field. The one to Guyton, he was facing some pressure as well. I mean, just awesome stuff from Herbert this year. He is not afraid to throw deep. We've seen some errors. We've seen some bad picks over these first few starts, but we've also seen a hell of a lot of upside. And I think this guy is actually flirting with fantasy relevance sooner rather than later. That Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense is no joke. And for Herbert to go on the road and do the things he did without Mike Williams even too, and with Austin Ekeler getting hurt early on, I mean, truly impressive. I mean, again, 20 for 25. With only really Keenan Allen out there in terms of proven pass catchers. Okay, Hunter Henry too, but he only had 2 catches for 39 yards. So the fact Herbert was, again, putting up these numbers with these sort of no-name guys out there against a legit defense says a lot about his potential, particularly in year 1 as a fantasy performer. So Keenan Allen continued to eat 12 targets, 8 catches, 62 yards. Didn't find the end zone, but big performance out of that. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, Donald Parham, XFL superstar, if you guys were into that, had a nice 19-yard touchdown, a contested catch, but just really good stuff from the Chargers offense. Unfortunately, though, got to talk about this injury Austin Ekeler looking like he's going to be missing out several weeks. Sounds like from Schefter, the early returns, that maybe it's not going to be a season-ending thing, which is good at least. But, had a couple nice plays to start, and then unfortunately was grabbing his hamstring knee area after coming down awkwardly. So now it's looking like the Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson show. Please do not go blowing all your fab on Joshua Kelly, everyone. I mean, look. He's fine. He's a good guy to have on your team. He might very well be the lead back here, but this is far from a settled situation. Everyone gets this idea in their head that Joshua Kelly is just playing so well right now, and Justin Jackson has no chance to come back in. I mean, look at the other situations around the league like this where we have a fairly talented incumbent backup and what's been happening to the rookies. With the Colts, we got Jordan Wilkins playing over Jonathan Taylor for stretches. With the Ravens, we got Gus Edwards relegating Dobbins to a bench role. As good as these rookies can be, if the incumbent backup has the coaching staff's trust, it doesn't matter how good we think the rookie is. So, and don't get it twisted. Justin Jackson is legit. I mean, 5.1 career yards per carry. That's fine. Throw out yards per carry. It's not a great stat for running backs. He was 5th in missed forced tackles per attempt last season, barely behind Josh Jacobs. And then if you just look at who averaged more yards after contact per attempt, only Darius Geis, Tony Pollard, and Derrick Henry had more yards after contact per attempt than Justin Jackson. Yes, it was a low, rush attempt sample, but, there's a reason why he was trusted to be the guy when Melvin Gordon was, holding out for those first 4 weeks. He did a good job with it. So right now, Joshua Kelly, 28th among 43 players in yards after contact per rush, 36 in percentage of carries to go for first down or touchdown. He's had fumble issues. I mean, I think he's going to be the lead back because it looked like that today after Ekeler got hurt, but it's going to be a two-back committee of some sorts, and I don't think it's going to be 70-30 by any stretch of the imagination. I'm thinking 50-50, honestly, maybe 60-40 in favor of Kelly, but if Justin Jackson's playing better, it's going to be him sooner rather than later. So, again, let someone else bid their entire fab on Joshua Kelly. You go get Justin Jackson for cheaper. He could very well be the more valuable asset as early as week 5. PFF Lily stat in the matchup, Brady, again, had the rough start, but once he got going, it was unbelievable. His final 20 throws of the day, 18 completions, 269 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks, good for a perfect 158.3 passer rating. Quick shout out to our sponsors at Underdog Fantasy. If you like fantasy football, you need to be playing on Underdog Fantasy, my favorite new fantasy football app. You draft a new team every week and get a shot at big prizes. No lineup setting, waiver wires, or bad trades to deal with. Customer service, awesome. Team that built the service is awesome. Look up Underdog Fantasy on your app store or go to underdogfantasy.com to play today. Make your first deposit today and be sure to use my code PFF after you do to let them know that I sent you. All right, everyone, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more games to go over. Appreciate you sticking with me. Next up, Seahawks 31, Dolphins 23. Russ continued to cook. It's wild at this point. We got so used to this being a run first offense, but I feel like through 3-4 weeks, it's almost like set in that Russ is cooking. So to me, it was like a quiet 360 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm just so used to this guy consistently, hitting these downfield throws, and it truly is ridiculous. With that said, though, he got some help from his receivers today. David Moore had an awesome game, with some wild yak out there and hurdles. And DK Metcalf, as much crap as this guy gets as, only a straight line dude. And, people say the only thing I can stop him is the 3-cone drill, which, okay, that is a funny joke. I'm not denouncing people saying that, but they just threw him a, quick screen just at the line of scrimmage. Cornerback was too far off. Metcalf turned around, caught the ball, and made a guy miss and went all the way down to the 1-yard line and almost scored. So awesome game from Metcalf again. Tyler Lockett was a ghost for most of the afternoon, ended up with 2 catches for 39 yards. Greg Olsen, 5 catches, 35 yards, led a touchdown, hit him in the chest, unfortunately. Russ did throw another pick, so at least, we got that off of Greg Olsen's chest. So he doesn't have to be consistently mentioned as the only reason why Russell Wilson has a pick anymore. So again, awesome day from Russell Wilson. Lockett's going to have bigger days, and Metcalf is unguardable. The big story was, my guy in week 3, Chris Carson, who I was, predicting for big game, 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns specifically. He decided to go ahead and do that this week instead, with exactly 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I was a week off on this one. Pretty much the same reasoning why I was hoping it would happen in week 3 occurred here. Look, it's a pass first offense now. This is fantastic, but pass first offenses sometimes get down the 1-yard line. And, hey, Russell Wilson, he threw 3 touchdowns from the 1-yard line in week 3. This week, Chris Carson instead got 2 rushing scores. So credit to Chris. He's got his bell rung. Last week it looked like he got his leg hurt. He keeps playing through the pain, keeps breaking tackles, keeps being a beast. So, Chris Carson, even if he's not going to be the, lead back of one of the league's most run-heavy offenses, he's the lead back of one of the most high-scoring offenses, and we will take that 8 days a week in Fantasyland. On the Dolphins side of the ball, Fitzpatrick put up numbers kind of the way we thought he would. He was a pretty popular kind of lower owned stack type guy. I know that's a little bit of a contradicting statement, but he was just someone people were kind of pointing to. It's like week 3 Gardner Minshew. Fitzpatrick was one of the top streamer options available. There we go. 315 yards. Devontae Parker was the one getting most involved. 10 catches on 12 targets for 110 yards. No one else over 50. And we're starting to see a problem here behind Devontae Parker. I've been hoping Mike Gesicki would kind of emerge as the guy, but he's not the only slot receiver here. They're using Isaiah Ford just as much. And today Ford had 10 targets. And a lot of that was kind of on the final drive. And he only caught 4 of those. So it wasn't like they need to keep going back to him. But, second straight game, Gesicki with just 1 catch. Preston Williams only had 1 catch. We got Myles Gaskin getting plenty involved. I mean, the problem for Gesicki is he's like the 1A, 1B slot receiver. And he's the number 3 or 4 tight end. I mean, they're getting Durham Smythe had the same amount of targets and double the yards and catches as Gesicki. We saw Adam Shaheen getting a target, and the running backs are Matt Breida had 3 targets. So there's just a lot of guys involved right now, and unfortunately it's not quite as condensed as we were hoping for. Parker's still the man, but I think Gesicki, with all the kind of viable tight end options we see pop up throughout the week, he's probably going to be a little more on that tight end 1 borderline, the consistent top 6, top 8 option that we were hoping for. Quick note with these running backs, Myles Gaskin continues to get the most of the workload, 63% snaps, 10 carries, 4 targets. But again, this is one of the only situations in the league where a true vulture does exist, and his name is Jordan Howard. After, another just sterling 2 carry, 2 yards, 0 touchdown performance, Jordan Howard's 16 game pace, 72 carries, 56 yards, 12 touchdowns. You love to see it unless you are a Myles Gaskin fantasy football manager. PFF Lily stabbed the matchup. So we know the Seahawks are letting Russ cook. I mean, his pass attempts and dropbacks, all-time highs, and that's great. But he is also literally better than ever. And this is the stuff like in basketball. Like that's always the easiest way I think of, someone having really good efficiency and increasing the volume. If you have a 3-point shooter that's just shooting spot ups all the time, taking the easy ones, and they can shoot 50%, once you double their attempts and the defense starts keying on them, they're probably not going to keep shooting 50%. Russell Wilson is pretty much, if we're sticking with that, scenario, he's now shooting like 75% because he's averaging career high 8.9 yards per attempt, career high 85% adjusted completion percentage, career high 127.7 QB rating. Russ is throwing more and doing it more efficiently, which is absolutely wild. He still deserves to be the number 1 MVP candidate after 4 weeks of action. On to some of the 4 o'clock games. Rams beat the Giants 17-9. This one was ugly. Rams came in as 2 touchdown favorites. Looked like the Giants couldn't stop anyone. Well, they did a pretty good job, at least slowing down the Rams. I mean, Goff wasn't awful, but he's just not being asked to do too much right now. Only 32 pass attempts. 200 yards, 1 score on it. Cooper Kupp, 55-yard touchdown on a coverage bust and just kind of ran away from everyone. So kudos there. Robert Woods, still had the rush attempt, 6 catches, 35 yards. It's a condensed enough at the top that I think Kupp and Woods are going to be fine more weeks from now. I mean, they each had 7 targets in this game, and they will have to pass a little bit more at some point. But beyond them, it's going to be tough. I mean, Higbee, 3 catches, 21 yards on 4 targets. Gerald Everett had a fumble, but he was getting involved. He actually scored the offense's lone touchdown on a little jet sweep from the 2-yard line on a rush, which was wild to see. So we are kind of seeing that, unfortunately, more Everett Higbee split up rotation. I mean, look, it was only 2 weeks ago that Higbee scored 3 touchdowns in a game. It's not like he doesn't have, really high end positive potential outcomes, but it is a situation where this offense just isn't throwing nearly as much as we've seen in past years. Because of that, anyone beyond Kupp and Woods, I think we are going to see a little more inconsistent usage than we prefer. With these running backs, this was the spot that probably lost a lot of people a lot of money. I was, ready to almost anoint Darrell Henderson as after this week, a potential, high-end RB2 moving forward. Not looking like the case. Looking like it's going to be more of a week-to-week situation moving forward, even though Henderson, was, back-to-back weeks, really the lead guy. Malcolm Brown took the lead in week 4, 61% snaps, 9 carries, 6 targets. Henderson, 8 carries, 1 target. I mean, look, Brown, he was a little more efficient in both. I wouldn't say he was, overwhelmingly the clear better player like he was in week 1, for example. He did make a really nice one-handed catch early in the game to get a first down on kind of an erratic throw by Goff. So maybe that just stuck out in McVay's mind. He decided to go with Brown after that. But Either way, I mean, this is in Henderson's range of outcomes now where Brown just takes over the backfield. And guess what? It's not going to get any better once Cam Akers gets back. So, still flex play. This is the Rams team, 3-1. We saw against the Bills, even when they get down, they can go put up some points. So you could do worse than, 10 plus touches as close to that floor in this offense. But again, not going to be a situation, I think, where we can hang our hat on a consistent RB2 moving forward. With the Giants, I'll keep this short pretty much. The wide receiver room, Golden Tate was getting in his fights with Jalen Ramsey, but other than that, we're not seeing a lot of fight out on the field. I mean, Evan Ingram caught 6 balls, 35 yards. They were trying to get him more involved early, but other than that, no one got over 50. Easier matchups will be out there. I mean, eventually they're going to play the Cowboys, and that's just, apparently a guaranteed 30 plus points. So maybe we can discuss the Giants offense at that point when they get going. But right now, just, so tough to come by. You're not seeing Jason Garrett use much pre-snap motion, much play action, just not doing much to help his quarterback. Jones took another 5 sacks in this game. Truly, the only good time that this offense looked was, 1, when Gallman had a really sick 26-yard run where he broke several tackles. And 2, there's a stretch where they got moving in the fourth quarter where the Rams just kind of inexplicably stopped guarding Devontae Freeman for a couple plays, and he racked up 35 receiving yards on 4 catches. And I don't know if they were back-to-back, but at least 3 of them were literally just no linebackers, went out 3-4 yards downfield, caught the ball, and moved forward. So yes, Devontae Freeman, when you look at these snaps here, 53% snaps, team high 11 carries, all 4 of the backfield's targets. Like, that's fine, but this offense still looks as awful as ever. Freeman looked like, the second, maybe even third best, rusher in the backfield. Still not a situation I'm looking to target at all. If anything, I'd say Freeman, is maybe a matchup dependent flex that with this volume, eventually he might be able to fall into the end zone once this offense has better days. PFF Lilly matchup of the PFF Lilly stat of the matchup. So Jared Goff, mentioned this guy's volume. He has not thrown more than 32 passes in a game this season. So that's our threshold we're using right now, 32. Last year, he failed to reach that mark in just 5 of 16 games. In 2018, it was 4 games. In 2017, it was 4 games. So we are only 1 game away from Jared Goff already equaling his, career high under Sean McVay in terms of just games where he hasn't thrown more than 32 passes. So there were games last year where he literally hit over 60, and that, really increased the floor for Woods and Kupp. They've been efficient with it this year. Again, it's a good offense. They haven't had to throw the ball much. So if that changes, maybe we'll see the volume kind of even things out. Again, I don't think Kupp and Woods are incapable of both providing wide receiver 2 value here moving forward, but it might be kind of tough to get that both top 12 that fantasy investors were hoping for. Bills beat the Raiders 30-23. Heavy heart to regret and inform everyone here that Josh Allen did finish with under 300 passing yards, first time in 2020 after never doing so previously. He hurt his shoulder for a second and it looked scary, but he was able to come right back in after a drive. I don't even think he missed he missed a couple snaps, but anyway, came right back in. -1 rushing yard on the day. Buddy scored a rushing touchdown. And this is the Josh Allen experience. I mean, they were mentioning on the broadcast or just, no one has more QB sneaks in the league over these past 2 years. And look, it's Josh Allen and Jordan Howard are the 2 vultures in the NFL. And that's pretty much it. Since 2018, here are the guys with at least 20 rushing touchdowns. Todd Gurley, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Melvin Gordon, Nick Chubb, and Mr. Josh Allen. So awesome stuff there. I mean, anytime you can get a quarterback with this sort of rushing floor and just the scoring upside when they get down in that range, it's pretty much a fantasy cheat code, which is what we've seen from Josh Allen this year, even on a day when he doesn't throw for 300 yards. Inexplicably can't get over 300 yards. Still plenty of fantasy goodness. Shout out Devin Singletary, another awesome game. Zach Moss wasn't available again because of his toe injury. Saw Singletary play 88% of the offensive snaps with 18 carries and 6 targets. So once again, dominated usage. Scored a goal line touchdown. How about that? They gave him the ball down there. But, he is a smaller and kind of slight guy. But make no mistake about it, this dude's been balling. Mentioned before how he is in that top 3 backs and most broken tackles over these past 3 weeks. Again, almost every single play you see him getting the ball, he's not going down with the first defender he meets. So awesome stuff from Singletary. Stephon Diggs looking fantastic too. 6 catches, 115 yards on 7 targets. And John Brown should have had a great 14-yard touchdown. They ruled it just short. It's still weird how it happened. It seemed like he broke the pylon, but not quite there. Wasn't a week where the Bills had to really air it out. Josh Allen, relatively mild, 34 pass attempts. They were able to kind of build a multi-score lead midway through the fourth quarter. We were able to take their foot off the gas, but But Beasley a little bit banged up. Gabriel Davis, big play. I mean, there's going to be more than enough production to go around, I think, for Diggs and John Brown more weeks than not, which is not something that we felt too confident about this time last month. So on the other side of the ball, Derek Carr, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns. A little bit of it, coming from a late 7-point drive there at the end. That was a little bit meaningless. Josh Jacobs just couldn't get going. On the ground, though, 15 carries, 48 yards. The game script wasn't bad, though, everyone. I mean, by that, I mean Jacobs' performance in this negative game script wasn't that bad. I mean, he played 67% of the offensive snaps, 15 carries, 4 targets. We've been talking about this where last year in the first game of the year, he played 70% snaps, 2 touchdowns, and they killed him. Next 2 weeks, he was under 50% in games that the Raiders ended up losing, by a touchdown or more. So the fact he was still at 67% and had the 4 targets in this game, it's unfortunate he didn't find the end zone, but, he's going to have better games scoring, better games efficiency-wise. He's a great running back. The fact that he had these touches, had those snap rates, he's still on the field. In a game, the Raiders were trailing heavily, in the second half at a point. Good to see moving forward for Jacobs when they are going to be in these sort of situations. Against the Chiefs next week, for example, definitely could be a case. Also, last point I'll make here, with all these injuries, Darren Waller had a good game, 9 catches, 88 yards on 12 targets, and also Hunter Renfrow, 5 catches, 57 yards. But I did a podcast with Alex Baker, number 1 DFS player in the world. You might know him as Awesomeo, but we made the point on Saturday when we were kind of looking at cheap options. Once N'Keal Harry and Damiere Byrd got off the slate, we ended up on Nelson Aguilar a little bit because the point was, again, like one of my worst mistakes last year as a, just fantasy analyst was, brushing off Brashad Perriman at the end of the year. Godwin was out, Evans was out, and I just said, hey, it's Brashad Perriman. Like, come on, he's not going to do anything. The guy balled out. He's improved throughout his career. Nelson Aguilar is someone like that, where if he was not Nelson Aguilar, I think his ownership percentage would have been 5-10% higher going into the spot. Gruden keeps saying good things about him. He's kind of that perfect underneath type receiver that can, rack up yak from Derek Carr. And the guys look good in in Las Vegas so far. I mean, 4 catches on 4 targets for 44 yards in his score. And the one you didn't see was a 55-yard touchdown that got nullified because of an illegal formation penalty. So again, if Ruggs and Edwards are going to hang out and just not be able to play, truly wouldn't be surprising to see Aguilar take over this wide receiver room. I know Zay Jones and Hunter Renfrow have more targets, but Aguilar's looking good out there, and it's ugly. I know the funny, hilarious Eagles fan meme with it, and we'll be firing that GIF up the second that Aguilar resumes his old ways. But again, just if you removed everything you know about him previously and just look at the situation, I think you'll see a spot we should maybe be looking at a little more closely. PFF the list stat of the matchup. So Josh Allen this year, I mean, look, again, I think Russell Wilson is for sure number 1 MVP candidate, but the Bills are 4-0. We got to start putting Josh Allen in that conversation if he's not already. He should be probably number 3, I think, behind Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, depending on what happens Monday night. And look, the numbers are there. Josh Allen, 1,339 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick, another 90 rushing yards, and 3 scores on the ground. Russ is at 1,200 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 picks, 50 yards on the ground. So, 15 touchdowns for 16 touchdowns. Russ has been like the most efficient quarterback in the league, but Josh is top 5 in most of these same categories. So no losses, both, wild efficiency. The MVP talks are deserved. 2020, the year of Josh Allen. I love it, everyone. Colts beat the Bears 19-11. This game is just as ugly as that weird sounding score sounds. It was a situation where I thought both running backs had a chance to kind of put together some big performances, and from David Montgomery's perspective, I mean, he had the opportunity to do so, at least if this game script would have been a little bit more in hand. First week without Tariq Cohen in the fold. Cordero Patterson, he got his touches, but this was not a situation where he really took that Tariq role. This was just a David Montgomery show. Career high, 85% snaps, 10 carries, 3 targets. And, he turned to he actually had 6 targets, 3 catches, 30 yards on those. So he did a good job with the receiving work. And as I've been preaching on this podcast, he's been doing a good job all season. And, this matchup didn't go well, but it's Colts defense. Fewest passing yards in the league going in this game. They got Darius Leonard, they got DeForest Buckner, and they got talent at all 3 levels of this unit. I think Montgomery's going to have better matchups, better weeks ahead. If he's getting 85% snaps, he's going to be a top 20 RB on volume alone. Again, like our Nelson Aguilar story, deriving from Brashad Perriman last year, don't give up on a guy just because of, a 10-week sample size. Football is already a small sample size sport. We got to follow volume as much as possible. With the passing game, Nick Foles, 249 yards through the air and 42 attempts. Didn't look great, everyone. Allen Robinson made some spectacular catches on the final drive to kind of give himself a good day, but just Foles throughout the game didn't look good. Again, I want to give this Colts defense a lot of credit, so I'm not going to, give up on Foles just yet. He looked fantastic in that Falcons game, but, I think it is a reminder that Foles couldn't beat out Trubisky. He's probably not the savior that he was made out to be in the second half of last week. Beyond Allen Robinson, I still think, anyone in this passing game is going to be tough to expect much consistent production from. Phillip Rivers, again, didn't have to throw more than 30 pass attempts, completed 16 and 29 for 109 yards and a score. Mo Alley Cox with a touchdown. Only 2 targets, though, for Maction, as we like to call him here. Did catch that 13-yard score. So I think as long as Jack Doyle and now Trey Burton are also in the fold, it's going to be tough to expect much from Mo Alley Cox, even though he does have that nose for the end zone. And even T.Y. Hilton is getting tough at this point. Only 5 targets. Zach Pascal actually had 8 targets. Hilton's their number 1. At some point, he's going to break out, but season long, it's going to be tough to treat him as more of a wide receiver than more of a wide receiver 3 moving forward. Quickly on this Colts backfield. So there's a couple ways we can kind of look at this. So on the one hand, Jonathan Taylor had 17 carries, 68 yards. We didn't see him get super involved as a receiver, only 1 catch for 11 yards, but 18 opportunities in a game that, the Colts were pretty much, again, just in too positive a game script to do much, not awful. But we're seeing Jordan Wilkins a little more involved than we would like. And this was not all garbage time snaps. He was out there 18% snaps, Nyheim Hines 35%, Taylor 44%. They're not going to give Taylor the ball 30 times a game and, 80%, 90% snaps like the Cowboys might with Zeke. That's probably smart by the coaching staff. And it makes sense for the real life goal winning football. It's just a little bit annoying in fantasy for right now. I think things will increase when they do get in this game, that they're not up multiple scores in the fourth quarter. At some point, that's going to happen for the Colts. Hasn't been that way over the last 3 weeks. And unfortunately, this is looking like a 3-back backfield, not just 2. So, I'm still going to be treating as Jonathan Taylor as a fantasy RB1. That top 5, top 6, I think that we were hoping for, though, might still be a little bit off. PFF Lilly matchup stat. So Nick Foles' target distribution over these past 6 quarters of action. Allen Robinson at 16. Darnell Mooney at 13, Jimmy Graham at 12, Dave Montgomery at 10, Anthony Miller at 11. Look, I've been hoping that it was going to be Anthony Miller as number 2 receiver. Dating back to, last year, 2 years ago. I think the guy's great. He still usually made the most of his chances this year. But at this point, Darnell Mooney is the Bears' number 2 wide receiver. And, depending how you feel about Jimmy Graham, which I still think he's very much washed, Darnell Mooney's the number 2 pass game option in this Bears offense right now with Tariq Cohen gone. So, again, it's Foles. Anything behind Robinson, it's Foles and Trubisky under there. Anything behind Robinson is not going to be guaranteed. But Mooney is the number 2 guy. You could do worse than doing a dart throw on him in DFS. If you're really stretched out the position, he is someone that could flirt with, 7+ targets per week, as we have seen. So, final game to get to. Thank you all for sticking with me here. Pretty fun Sunday night game. I think we were expecting a little bit of a worse matchup, but Eagles beat the 49ers 25-20. Credit to Carson Wentz for getting the W. But, man, Dwayne McFarland, who works at PFF, I've had him on the podcast a lot for the game-by-game breakdowns. He brought this up before this game where Carson Wentz is playing like he's going to get hurt soon. And we saw that out there, just play after play after play. Credit to him for doing everything in his power to get the win. I love the play where it was a Jalen Hurts Wildcat, and they showed Wentz, really putting his head into the corner, trying to block him and, get physical out there. So I love it. It's a cool football guy move and everything. But, man, as someone that's already not had the best injury history, you don't like seeing that from Wentz. And the one thing that if Wentz gets hurt, Jalen Hurts is going to be on the QB1 radar immediately because of how much rushing usage he's going to have. So, I understand having a backup quarterback in fantasy, pretty ridiculous notion for some of these, bench sizes. But if you are in a big league that's, not a dynasty and Hurts is sitting there and you have the room, I would consider doing it because if Wentz goes down, Hurts is going to, double Wentz's fantasy value just because he's probably going to be looking at, 10+ rush attempts per game. But yeah, it was kind of disappointing effort from Miles Sanders because still dominating snaps and everything, but 13 carries, 46 yards, only 4 targets, 2 catches for 30 yards. They're just throwing some no-name guys. Who the hell is Travis Fulgham? Well, he's the guy that caught the 42-yard touchdown game-winning score, or at least the go-ahead score on Sunday night. So, Travis Fulgham, AAF superstar Greg Ward, Aaron Rodgers' old friend Richard Rodgers is out there catching 3 catches, 35 yards. So, everyone's getting the job done, this banged up Phillies receiving room, except Zach Ertz. 4 catches, 5 targets, 9 yards, 0 scores. Not what you want to see for someone that's, been vocal about wanting a new contract. Shout out to at Zach Ertz Yak on Twitter. Anytime Zach Ertz gets a reception, they break down whether or not he breaks a tackle. Spoiler, it is usually no. So that's kind of the Eagles offense. Looking at the other side of the ball, Kyle Shanahan pretty much rage benched Nick Mullins in the fourth quarter, which was pretty hilarious. Mullins really wasn't playing all that bad. He had a red zone pick in the first half and then just, again, a brutal pick 6 that literally just caused Shanahan to pull him. So I don't think, as well as CJ Beathard did play to lead them back down. If Jimmy G remains out, I don't know if it's a given that Mullins, wouldn't be the guy. I do think, some of the truthers that have been emerging out there probably need to take a step back, but I wouldn't say that, this one performance was a reason to completely write off Mullins the rest of his career. And he talks about a quarterback controversy was already ridiculous as it is, but, maybe there could be one between Mullins and Beathard now, because for Beathard to go down the field, really bring them back and at least have a Hail Mary chance to win it at the end, said a lot. So it really just, whoever was under center, they were throwing the ball to George Kittle. First game back, 15 targets, 15 catches, 183 yards and a score. Also chipped in an 8-yard rush. Looked as good as ever the entire time. I mean, truly, a specimen out there. He leads PFF, over these past 10 years in yards after catch per reception. Have not seen a talent like him at the tight end position. Maybe ever. I don't want to say he's the best tight end ever or anything like that. Calm down. I'm just saying in terms of, high-end yak with this sort of volume, I think Kittle just separates himself from some of the other tight ends we've seen. And he's not a move guy, obviously. He's not, someone that's lining up as a receiver. Very much an inline guy, putting his nose in there in the blocking game. Truly one of the best, most valuable non-QBs in the entire league. Quick shout out Brandon Ayuk, aka Ayuk. Oh my goodness. He got probably should have been a pass. It was kind of interesting. They ruled it a rush. It was like a little swing pass that they said went backwards, but 38 yards to the house, topped it off with an awesome hurdle, stayed in bounds and scored. Also, Deebo Samuel got on the board with didn't find the end zone, but 10-yard rush. 3 catches for 35 yards coming back. We'll see him get, even more involved in future weeks. It's looking like a situation where, it might be a little inconsistent behind Kittle. Kittle's number 1, tight end 1 or 2, depending on the week, probably usually 2 behind Kelsey. But, Samuel and Ayuk, if they're in a situation where they got to throw the ball a little bit, and they did this week, 45 pass attempts as a team, we could see both of these guys emerge as, fantasy viable, almost upside wide receiver 3s, if not even a little higher. So good stuff there. Good stuff from Jerick McKinnon, 14 carries, 54 yards, and a score. Also chipped in 7 catches, 43 yards. Jeff Wilson did not play a single snap in the first half. In the second half, he was very little use as well, only 3 catches. 4-6 yards. McKinnon is their full-time, pass down back. Really good stuff out of him. As long as Mostert and Coleman remain sidelined, we can honestly move McKinnon up almost in that top 16 range at this point with this sort of usage. They are really leaning on him as the bell cow back. He continues to look good. Great comeback story for Jerick McKinnon. PFF Lilly matchup stat of the night. Yeah, George Kittle, 15 out of 15 targets. Like I said, 183 yards in the score. He's played 8 quarters of football this year. And in the second half of week 1, he wasn't even used as a receiver. So truly almost just 6 quarters as a receiving option. 7th among all tight ends this year in receiving yards. Guy missed 2 games, has not missed a beat at the position. He is still coming for another top 2 finish in fantasy. Do not get it twisted. One quick word from our sponsor before we get out of here. We'll shout out Monkey Knife Fight. If you want the PFF Edge subscription at less than $40, just go to Monkey Knife Fight, everyone. That's all you need to do. Go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit $20. You will get a free PFF Edge annual subscription, $40 value for that $20. And guess what? You can use the $20, try and make more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest growing fantasy sports sites in the USA and Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20, promo code PFF today, and then receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. So that's going to do it. Thank you all for listening. As always, it's been the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast and your host, Ian Hartitz, back every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with more. So hope you all enjoyed the games. Until next time, take care.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.